Hey guys, it's Lotus and welcome back to another video. Today, we are going to continue on with our read-along of Urha. You might notice that Cinders is not here anymore. He was here for Spooky Month, but now he's just resting in his room. So it's just going to be me, guys. Hope you don't mind. Anyway, let's jump right into chapter 46. Okay, this chapter 46, this venerable one wakes up. When he came to, Moran discovered he was still inside the holy weapon arsenal. He seemed to have been asleep for a long time, but when he opened his eyes, he found that not much time had passed. In fact, it might have been only but a blink of an eye. He didn't know if it was because the spell was successfully broken, but when he woke up, he discovered he was lying on the ground without a single injury. That savage wound, that gory blood, they were all just a nightmare, leaving not a trace on his body. Moran was both surprised and delighted in spite of himself. Then he looked over to Shimei. He didn't know when Shimei lost consciousness, but he was also free of any harm. Could it be that after passing the exalted Gochen's test, not only did Gochen break the illusion, he had also healed all the wounds they received within the illusion? Although now that he thought about it, Gochen the Exalted didn't intend to harm them, so this was more appropriate for the initial objective of testing them. Still, it just didn't feel real to Moran, and he still felt like he barely escaped with his life. Among the four of them, he was the first to wake. Then it was Shimei. Seeing Shimei's lashes slowly flutter open, Moran was overjoyed and exclaimed eagerly, "Shimei, we're all right! Quite all right! Quick, look at me!" Within Shimei's eyes was first a flash of confusion. Then gradually they became more lucid, and he widened his eyes abruptly. "Aran, you..." Before he finished, he was wrapped in a tight embrace by Moran. Shimei couldn't help but be taken aback, but still he gently patted his shoulder. "What's with you?" "I'm sorry that I made you suffer so." Shimei was confused. "Well, it wasn't really anything. I just had a dream, that's all." "But the hurt was still real!" Moran exclaimed. "What hurt?" Shimei asked. Just then, Xuemeng also woke up, and who knows what he dreamt of, but he yelled, "Insolent ruffian, you dare fill me up?" and he shot up. Shimei saw that he was awake and walked over. "Young master." "Huh? Why is it you? Why are you here?" Xuemeng thought he was still in a dream. Moran was in a good mood, so his attitude towards Xuemeng was also very soft, and he smiled as he gave an account of the things that happened. Only then did reality dawn on Xuemeng. So it was a dream, and here I thought... In order to hide his awkwardness, Xuemeng cleared his throat and suddenly discovered that the typically most powerful Chuaning was actually still asleep, not yet roused, and was astonished in spite of himself. How come Shizun hasn't woken up yet? They walked over and examined Chuaning's wounds. Since Chuaning was already injured before the illusion activated, and by the exalted Gochen's design, only injuries suffered within the illusion could be healed, Chuaning's shoulder was still soaked in large amounts of blood, a shocking sight to see. Moran sighed. Let's wait a bit longer and see. It took about 1 incense stick's worth of time before Chuaning finally came to. He slowly opened his phoenix eyes, and when he woke, his eyes were empty and cold, like it had just snowed heavily in a thick blanket of white. It was a long time before his eyes moved and his gaze fell on Moran. However, he seemed to just be like Xuemeng and hadn't completely snapped out of the dream state in that moment. He gazed at Moran, then slowly reached out, his voice cracking. "You." "Shizun," Moran acknowledged. Hearing Moran call him thus, Chuaning's hand paused in midair, and a trace of warmth finally seemed to appear on his pale face, and his eyes also brightened all of a sudden. Shizun!" Xuemeng pushed Moran aside and threw himself at Chuaning, clutching his hand. "Are you alright? Are you feeling better? Shizun, you didn't wake up for the longest time. I was going to die from worry." When Chuaning saw Xuemeng, he was slightly bemused. Then the thin layer of fog in his eyes gradually faded. When he took a closer look at Moran, he saw that while the other was also looking back, he was holding Shimei's hand tightly, having never let go for a second. Thus, Chuaning completely woke up, his expression cooling. Then, like a fish in a dried pond, it died thoroughly. "Oh no, Shizun! Shinmei asked with concern. Shizun, are you alright? Does your shoulder hurt? Chuaning replied tranquilly. It's fine. I'm fine. It doesn't hurt. With Xuanmeng's assistance, he slowly stood up. Moran was a little puzzled. Chuaning had hurt his shoulder, so why did he step so gingerly when he rose, like it was his feet that were injured? Moran thought Chuaning didn't know what had happened in the illusion earlier, and gave another brief account. Oh no, poor Shizun. Stupid Moran, dumb Husky, thinking it was Shinmei that saved him when it was actually Chuaning. What can you do? When Shinmei heard the account the first time, he already thought something wasn't right, and now that he listened again, he felt even more perplexed and said, unable to hold back, Rynn, you said I was the one who saved you? Yeah. Shinmei was quiet for a moment, then said slowly, but I've been dreaming the whole time earlier. I never woke up. Moran was taken aback, then immediately laughed. Stop joking around. I'm not joking, Shinmei said. I dreamt about my mom and dad. They were still alive. That dream was too real. I didn't think I could leave them behind. He hadn't finished before they heard Chuaning say flatly, That's nothing strange. Gochen probably wiped your memory of rescuing others. Either way, neither myself nor Xuanmeng saved him, and since he said it was you who saved him, then it was you. Oh no, Shizun is giving away the credit because he's embarrassed. Poor Shizun. Oh. By the way, I can frown now. You see my eyebrows? Not frowning? Now I'm sad. Okay. Otherwise what? Did you think Gochen had a way to swap people's souls? Chuaning said coldly. He hadn't wanted to suffer for nothing, and had originally wanted to tell Moran the truth. He had also hoped Moran would notice that the person within the illusion wasn't Shinmei, but it was he who had swapped hearts with Shinmei. However, Moran's confession towards Shinmei at the end, to Chuaning, really was much too embarrassing. When he woke, he gazed at Moran's bright black eyes. There was a moment where Chuaning thought, perhaps in Moran's heart, he did care for him even just a little bit. Such a humble expectation, it took a long time before such a weak and vulnerable thought dared peek out in secret. But it was all in his head. The blood he bled, the injuries he suffered. Moran knew nothing of them, and there was no need for him to know either. Oh yeah, also check it out. I can change my blush too. No blush, blush. Well, a lot of blush. No blush, a little blush. I just wanted to show you guys. Let's see. Chuaning wasn't dumb. Even if Moran didn't say anything, it was easy to see just how much he treasured that gentle and beautiful person. Why would Moran ever look at him, standing in the corner like a doll piled with dust? Yet, when he heard Moran say with his lips, I've always liked you, Chuaning still felt like he had completely lost an utter miserable defeat. He had lost completely. I'm sorry, I switched the words. That embrace within the illusion, to Moran, it was a charity bestowed from Shinmei. But Moran would never know that that embrace was him bestowing a charity upon another pitiful soul. Chuaning had never believed that Moran would ever fall in love with him, so he did his best to suppress his feelings, never trying to force his hand, never causing any disturbance, never touching him. That reckless affection, those passionate, obsessive entanglements, only grew on the soil of youth. When he was young, he had also hoped there might be someone who could stay by his side, clinking glasses beneath the moon. But he waited and waited, and still this person never showed. Later, time passed day by day. His name within the cultivation world climbed higher and higher, and everyone stopped short of admiration, spreading word that he was an unreasonable character. It was as if he was hiding in a cocoon, and time was continuously spinning silk around him. At first, he could still see some light from the outside seeping through the cocoon, but year after year, there was more and more silk and the cocoon grew thicker and thicker. So much so that he could no longer see the light. Within the cocoon was only himself and darkness. He didn't believe in love, he didn't believe in chance encounters, and he certainly didn't want to go chase after anything. If he arduously bit through the cocoon, covering himself with wounds, and came crawling out clumsily without anyone to wait for him on the other side, What would he do? He might like Moran, but this boy was too young, far too out of reach, and too fiery. Chuaning didn't want to get close, lest one day he would be burned to ashes by such a flame. Thus, he had taken every path of retreat there was. He didn't know what he had done wrong. What had he done, that even such a small daydream should be drowned by storming frigid rain? Shizun, look over there, quick! Xuemeng's sudden startled cry brought Chuaning's mind back, and his gaze followed the sound, only to see that roaring molten metal was rolling once again in the smelting pool. The ancient tree spirit broke through the waters once more, surrounded by flames. However, the tree spirit's eyes were rolled back, obviously in a state of senselessness. In its hands, it held that silver-shimmering sacred sword of Gochen the Exalted. "Run, quickly!" Chuaning ordered. No need to have him repeat himself. The disciples immediately all dashed towards the exit. The manipulated tree spirit raised its head towards the sky and shrieked, the iron chains all over his body rattling soundly, clinking and clanking. No one had spoken, but all four of them heard a voice in their ears at the same time. "Stop them, not a single one shall escape." Xuemeng cried in dismay, "Someone's talking in my ears!" "Don't pay him any mind," Chuaning replied. "It's Zhai Xianliu's technique, temptation of the heart. Just focus on escaping." Now that he had said it, the others still remembered. When Zhai Xianliu was still conscious, he had told them once. The temptation of the heart technique used the greed and desire in one's heart as bait to compel people to slaughter one another. Sure enough, that voice in Chuaning's ears hissed, "Chuaning, aren't you tired? Esteemed Dongzhi, you hung of the night sky, such a character. But you could only sneakily love your own disciple in secret. You have given him much, but he took it all for granted. He never had eyes for you. He only likes that gentle and beautiful little Shiga. How pitiful." Chuaning's face was steely dark. He ignored the noise in his ears completely and continued to run for the exit. "Come to my side, take up this ancestral sword, kill Shimei, and no one will stand between the two of you. Come to my side, I can help you achieve your wish, have your beloved love, only you. Come to my side." Chuaning cried angrily, "What a wretch! Get the hell out!" The others had obviously all heard the different terms the voice proposed, and while their pace had slowed, they could still fight against the temptations. The closer they got to the exit, the more Zhai Xianliu seemed to thrash in madness, and the hissing howls in their ears were practically becoming gnarled. "Think it through! Once out of the door, there will never be another chance!" The voices within everyone's ears were all different, shrieking sharply, "Chuaning, Chuaning, will you really be alone for the rest of your life? Mo Wei Yu, only I know where the resurrection pill is. Come to my side, let me tell you. Shi Mingjing, I know the desire in the deepest recesses of your heart. Only I can help you. Shui Ziming, the holy weapon you selected is a fake. There is only one weapon forged by Gochen the Exalted left in Jinchang Lake. Come back, and this ancestral sword shall belong to you. Didn't you want the weapon of the gods? Didn't you want to be the darling of the heavens? Without a holy weapon, you will never be able to compete with anyone else. Come to my side." Xuemeng! Moran suddenly discovered that his cousin, who was running by his side, had disappeared. Oh my gosh, Xuemeng, no! He whipped his head around and saw Xuemeng's steps were slowing until he finally stopped, looking back to gaze at that silvery blue sacred sword floating up and down in the smelting pool. Moran's heart lurched. He knew just how obsessed Xuemeng was about holy weapons. When this bastard first found out the weapon he received was fake, he must have been quite depressed. Zhai Xianliu tempting him with the ancestral sword really was the best tactic. "Xuemeng, don't believe him! Don't go!" Shimei chimed in too. "Young master, let's go! We're almost at the exit!" Looking lost, Xuemeng turned his head back and glanced at them while the echoing noises grew even more enchanting. "They're jealous of you. They just don't want you to have a holy weapon. Think about Mo Wei Yu. He has already won his weapon. Of course he'd rather you have nothing. You two are brothers, but if you are not better, then the honored leader position of Shisheng Peak will naturally fall to him." Xuemeng muttered, "Shut up." Before him, Moran seemed to be anxiously yelling something at him, but he couldn't hear clearly at all, and could only hug his head and cry repeatedly, "You shut your mouth! Shut up! Shui Ziming, there are already no more weapons suitable for you at the holy weapon arsenal. If you miss out on the ancestral sword, you will only be able to submit yourself in servitude to Mo Wei Yu in the future. When that time comes, he will be your master. You must kneel before him, obey his every command. Just think, if you kill him, none of that will happen. Fratricide is not uncommon throughout history. Oh, wait. Oh, it's still Dai Xianlu talking. Fratricide is not uncommon throughout history, and he's only your cousin. What is there to hesitate? Come, allow me to give you the sword. Shuemeng! Young master! Shuemeng suddenly stopped struggling, and his eyes shot open, his pupils red. Come to my side. You are the darling of the heavens. You are worthy to lead an army of millions. Chuaning shouted sharply, Shuemeng! Come! Only when you've become the leader of Shisheng Peak will the lower cultivation world know peace. Think of those in suffering. Think of all the injustice you all suffered. Xue Ziming, let me help you. Unwittingly, Shuemeng had already come before the bubbling smelting pool, and the spirit of Dai Xianlu presented the ancestral sword of Gochen the Exalted, the whites of its rolled eyes crawling with bloody veins. Very good. Take this sword and go stop them. Shuemeng slowly raised his trembling hand and took that silvery blue sacred sword. Kill them! Kill Mo Wei Yu! Go! Ah! Shuemeng pulled out the long sword abruptly and a splendid steel blossom in his hand. He swung backhanded and struck swiftly. The handsome visage of the darling of the heavens reflected brilliantly in the spiritual aura of the ancestral sword. And, illuminated by the shrine of the blade, his eyes were clearer and brighter than ever before, and not at all inundated with bloodlust. That strike wasn't directed at Moran, but instead he lunged straight for the body of Dai Xianlu, piercing through its abdomen. Instantly, the earth trembled, and the ancient willow shook. The spell was broken, and the inside of the holy weapon arsenal began to crack and collapse. Well done, Shuemeng! Shuemeng panted harshly. He had used everything he had to break free from enchantment. He glared at Dai Xianlu, his young face filled with youthful determination and innocence. In those shining eyes gleamed both pride and naivety. The Phoenix's chick wasn't only made of martial principles. Don't you befuddle me, and don't even think about harming anyone else. Shuemeng panted as he finished speaking, and rapidly wrenched out the long sword. In an instant, there was a burst of the astringent stench of blood from Dai Xianlu, and as he slumped in death, his conscience returned to his body, and the resentment energy within him were completely dispersed. Clutching his chest, he arduously steadied his drooping body, lifted his face, opened, then closed his mouth, and while there was no voice, the shape of his lips were easy to interpret. Thank you for stopping me. Dai Xianlu's original body was a spirit of ancient times, matched in power with the ancestral sword, and when the two clashed, both sides suffered a grievous loss. The ancestral sword in Shuemeng's hand was also lost its spiritual aura, dimming and wilting. All at once, the tree spirit of a million years dissipated its form. In an instant, millions of sparkles scattered into the waters, and like fireflies, they danced and circled around them, fluttering and flowing, the golden shimmers bright, until finally they faded, never to be seen. Young master, come here, quick! This place is going to collapse! Shinmei called. The earth was shaking. They couldn't stay for long. Shuemeng looked back and gave the holy weapon arsenal one final look. Then, with a clank, he tossed the destroyed ancestral sword, leaving it behind. And behind him, bricks and shingles caved in like the crash of an avalanche. Okay, that was the end of chapter 46. I'm sorry I stumbled a bit over my words. But yeah, so Moran woke up and he automatically assumed that Shinmei would remember saving him, but blah blah blah. My words are so tongue-tied today. Shinmei doesn't remember because Shinmei did not save Moran. It was actually Chuaning who had switched spirits with Shinmei, but Chuaning isn't too embarrassed to confess to Moran that it was actually him who saved him, so he didn't say anything. He gave the credit to Shinmei, even though Shinmei's like, I did not save you, Moran. Are you sure you were not just stuck in your dream or something? And they finally broke out of that, and so they're running to the exit, but Dai Xianlu, who's still possessed by the dark energy, tried to stop them by using like a hypnosis technique. But Shuemeng to the rescue. He was able to fight against the enchantment and grabbed the sword, ancestral sword, and destroyed and defeated Daishin Liu. So he freed Daishin Liu from the enchantment, and he destroyed the holy weapon arsenal. So, is he gonna have to pay for that? Like, monetarily? Because he destroyed it? That was the real arsenal, wasn't it? So, or was that all just an enchantment? I'm not really sure. But yeah, so let's see how the fallout happens in the next chapter. Okay, chapter 47. This venerable one feels like something is off. Chuaning was injured, and the other three were exhausted, so once they got to the corridor outside the arsenal, Chuaning ordered them to rest a bit. No one spoke for a while, either standing or sitting as they inspected the injuries on themselves or someone else, recuperating their strength. Except for Xuemeng, who was spacing out with his head drooping, lost in thought about something. Moran murmured, Xuemeng. Xuemeng paid no heed to anyone else, only walked over stiffly to stand before Chuaning, looked up, and when he opened his mouth, his voice was shattered glass. Shizun! Looking at him, Chuaning felt an urge to pet his tousled hair, but managed to push it down in the end. No, you should have gave him a head pat. Xuemeng would have really appreciated it. And then Moran would have been really jealous. The holy weapon I picked before, was it a fake? Chuaning was silent. The rims of Xuemeng's eyes became even redder, and his eyes grew bloodshot. If not for his pride and stubbornness propping him up, tears probably would have started falling on the spot. Does this mean I'll never be able to have a holy weapon? Wait, let me say that again. Does that mean I'll never be able to have a holy weapon? Chuaning closed his eyes with a sigh. The corridor was silent, save for Chuaning's clear voice. Silly child. A silly child said in a helpless sigh, and the last of Xuemeng's rationality crumbled. Unable to endure any longer, he threw himself into Chuaning's arms and, clinging to his waist, began to bawl. Shizun! Shizun! Failing to obtain a holy weapon from Jincheng Lake was tantamount to forfeiting one's qualifications to rise up in the cultivation world, surrendering one's chance to ever stand at the top. Everyone was well aware of this. A mortal's powers were finite. Without a holy weapon, however strong, a person was still limited by their body of flesh and blood. The young masters of the sects in the upper cultivation realm more or less all have holy weapons passed down from their predecessors. These weapons, even if not completely compatible with their spiritual energies, were still considerably powerful. Only Xuemeng, since Shui Zhangyong and his brother had started from scratch, never received a holy weapon from Jincheng Lake. And so, when he chose to wield the ancestral sword against Daishin Liu in mutual destruction, it was the same as choosing to give up on his spirited ambitions to rise above all. Poor Xuemeng. Chuaning didn't ask anything, and didn't say any more, only holding Xuemeng and stroking his hair as he cried it out. Xuemeng grew up pampered, never really suffering any injustice. He spent all his days strutting around arrogantly, and had never cried since he was old enough to remember. But right now, tears streaked down his youthful face, and his every word came out broken, like the holy weapon he would never have, like the lion-hearted aspirations that he once thought were a sure thing, all of it shattered. Xuemeng. Chuaning held the disciple in his arms, consoling him. The waves at the bottom of the lake rippled past Chuaning's white cloak and his long inky hair. In that instant, Moran could only see his fine curtain of lashes lowering over the fragments of gentle light beneath. Then the waves picked up, ruffling hair and garment, and he could no longer see Chuaning's face clearly in the dim light. He only heard him say, "Don't cry, you're already great." His voice wasn't quite gentle, but coming from Chuaning's mouth, the words were indescribably soft. Inside the corridor, everyone fell silent as they each dwelled on their own thoughts. Moran leaned against the ice-cold wall, watching Chuaning hold Xuemeng, patting his shoulder, and his heart felt heavy. Oh, the poor puppy is jealous. This journey to Jincheng Lake, they came fresh and energized, but left laden with wounds. Xuemeng had been the darling of the heavens for 15 years, well regarded and high-spirited, but in the span of one day, everything collapsed. From now on, he will have to use the rest of his lengthy life just to try and forget these 15 years of cutting-edge glory. When they escaped from the arsenal, they saw Daishin Liu collapsing slowly into the pool, like an ancient colossus, finally exhausted. like the death of a gentle giant, the demise of the sun itself, the remaining merpeople scattered in fright. The million-years-old holy weapon arsenal was destroyed in an instant. So it was the real arsenal that was taken control of by a fake, an imposter. Oh no! Is Xuemeng gonna have to pay for destroying the arsenal? The celestial tree fell with a deafening rumble, setting off a surging tide in Jincheng Lake. Faced with the enormous whirlpool resulting therefrom, the merpeople transformed back into their large original forms in an attempt to weather the storm. Jincheng Lake was instantly filled with glimmering scales, with little room left for mere mortals. Moran shouted, "We can't get out this way!" Just as he said that, a thick sea dragon tail smashed in. Moran moved aside swiftly and barely managed to dodge it. Suddenly, a black dragon swooped in, larger than all the others, pitch black scales shimmering golden. Moran startled, "Wang Yue?" Wang Yue let out a mighty roar, and the mute dragon suddenly spoke, with a voice low like the chime of a great clock. "Climb on my back. With the destruction of Daixuan Liu, Jincheng Lake is soon to follow. Quickly, I will bring you out of here." Having no other options, they could only do as instructed, even without knowing if Wang Yue was friend or enemy. Wang Yue, carrying the four of them, surged through the perilous waves filled with thousands of dragons, the waters parting in his wake. "Hold on tight," was the only warning they got before the ancient dragon burst out of the water and soared into the skies. The pressure hit them like a ton of bricks, the flow of water like 1,000 galloping horses against their bodies. They couldn't open their eyes, could hardly breathe, clinging desperately to the dragon's back with all their might just to not get flung back into the lake. By the time they could open their eyes again, they were already high above Jincheng Lake, soaring through the clouds at the summit of Dawning Peak. Droplets of water flew off from the dragon's large, mirror-like scales, the spray turning into countless sparkles of light, materializing into a rainbow in the sky. Wang Yue raised his head in a roar as color washed over the land. Moran heard Xuemeng's voice from behind him against the fierce scowl, full of excitement. He really was young after all, easily distracted from his worries. "Oh my god! I'm flying! On a dragon!" Wang Yue circled above Dawning Peak, gradually shrinking in size while descending, until landing at the bank of Jincheng Lake at less than half his original size so as to not crush the rocks and floor in the surroundings, and stayed quietly in place while they dismounted. They turned to look toward Jincheng Lake, only to see the thick layer of ice melted, waves churning and scattering fragments of ice. The first light of dawn colored the eastern skies a pure white, the sunlight spilling into Jincheng Lake, glimmering brilliantly. Suddenly, Shimei called out, "Look at the dragons in the lake!" The dragons twisting and coiling in the lake, rising and falling with the waves, gradually stopped moving and then crumbled, one after another, turning into so many specks of dust, and black chess pieces floated up from the lake, gathering in midair. Moran muttered, "Zhenlong chess formation." Everything in the lake, from the sea dragons to Daixuan Liu himself, was under the control of Zhenlong chess formation. All of it was a match set up by someone hiding in the shadows. Moran shuddered. Something was off with this reborn era. Certain things happened earlier than they should have for no apparent reason. When he was 16 in the previous life, there was definitely no one who could command Zhenlong chess formation this well. Just who was this fake Gochen? Xuemeng cried, "Wang Yue!" Moran turned around, only to see Wang Yue crouching on the ground without moving. There was no black chess piece on his body, but he appeared extremely weak, eyes half closed. "You lot did well. It's far preferable to have our exalted god Gochen's Jincheng Lake be destroyed, than to have it fall into the hands of a villain." When he finished speaking, his entire body suddenly started glowing golden, and when the light subsided, he had assumed human form. "It was you?" Moran and Xuemeng exclaimed simultaneously. The Wang Yue before them was the very same white-haired elderly merman from before who had led them to the holy weapon arsenal. Wang Yue lifted his head, a hint of guilt in his eyes. "It was me." Xuemeng was shocked. You! Why did you lead us to the arsenal? Do you want to help us or harm us? If harm, then why did you bring us ashore? But if help, then if we hadn't passed Daixuan Liu's trial, wouldn't we have..." Wang Yue looked down, voice hoarse. Please accept my apologies. Circumstances being what they were, there was naught else I could do. The fake Gochen's own cultivation is insufficient, and he relied wholly on Daixuan Liu's spiritual power to wield the forbidden technique. The only way to dispel his magic was to overcome Zai Xianliu. I had no choice but to vest my hope in the four of you. Chuaning shook his head slightly, walked over to him, and began channeling spiritual energy to heal his injuries. Wang Yue let out a long sigh. Dao Zhang is kind, but there is no need. It is my time. I am the same as the other creatures of the lake, living off of Zai Xianliu's spiritual energy, and now that it has fallen, I shall not be long for this world. Wang Yue continued, the order of life and death cannot be forced. To have lived to see the nightmare of Jincheng Lake broken, my wish is already fulfilled, but I am terribly remorseful for having involved you four in the perils. Chuaning said, no matter, do you know who the pretender is and what he wants? Wang Ye replied, I do not know who he is, but his goal is most likely to obtain Dai Xianliu's power in order to command the 3 forbidden techniques. Chuaning muttered, the forbidden techniques require an incredible amount of spiritual energy. It would indeed be much easier for the help of an ancient tree spirit. Yes, that person said the same. He said that ancient spirits are immensely powerful, but extremely difficult to find. The only one traceable from the ancient records was Dai Xianliu. He only appeared fairly recently, and since taking control of Jinchen Lake, he spent all his time at the bottom of the lake, using Dai Xianliu's power to practice the forbidden techniques of rebirth and Zhenlong chess formation. Wang Ye sighed, his eyes somewhat empty and dull. Moran felt his heart drop. Sure enough, this trip to Jincheng Lake was completely different from the one in the past life, and all of the changes happened not long ago. Just what went wrong to make everything change course? He didn't have the strength to control living creatures, so he killed countless creatures in the lake and tried to control the dead instead. He managed that, and in a mere few weeks' time, he had massacred practically all the creatures in the lake and turned them into chess pieces. He left only a few alive to experiment on, myself being one. Moran asked, when you came out of the water to meet me, were you being controlled by the fake Gochen? No. Wang Yue slowly closed his eyes. He may be able to control the others, like the fox spirit or even Zai Xianliu, but he cannot control me. I am a spiritual beast tamed by the exalted Gochen at the creation of the world, millennia ago. When I submitted to being his steed, I was branded with his seal, to be loyal to one master only in life and in death. Then why did you? It was an act. I had no choice, Wang Yue sighed. The intruder couldn't control me completely, but the brand of the exalted Gochen is millions of years old, its effectiveness a mere fraction of the original. A portion of my body did fall under the fake Gochen's influence. The reason I was mute at our first meeting was because that person had control of my throat. Only when his magic was dispelled was I able to speak again. Moran asked, did that fake Gochen know you were pretending? I doubt it. Wang Yue looked at Moran as he spoke. He had planned to take your spiritual core today in order to extend Dai Xianliu's life, but he didn't anticipate me bringing you four back to the Holy Weapon Arsenal to destroy the ancient willow, and took no precautions against my interference. But Chuaning suddenly spoke. Perhaps it's not that he did not take precautions against you, but rather that he did not have the strength to spare for such. What does Zhao Zhang mean? Chuaning said, there's something else that's odd about the pretender. That's the end of the chapter? What's odd about the pretender? What did Chuaning figure out? Okay, author's notes. Today's mini-theater is modern edition of a segment of the plot. While writing, I had a universe brain moment. It felt that Moran was missing something in arc. After some contemplating, the thing he's missing is cigarettes, lol. After Jincheng Lake's destruction, modern edition. Start! Do-do-do! Inside the corridor, everyone fell silent as they each dwelled on their own thoughts. Moran leaned against the ice-cold wall, watching Chuaning holding Xuemeng, patting his shoulder, and his heart felt heavy. But Moran didn't say a single word. He lowered his head and fished out a box of cigarettes. There was only one left inside it. He held it between his lips, with a clicking sound from the lighter. A cluster of sparks illuminated and then dimmed. The light reflected in his eyes looked like a newly budded poppy. He deeply inhaled the puff of smoke, then slowly breathed it out. Amidst the addictive nicotine, Moran raised his eyelids. He gazed at them once again with nonchalance, then turned his face away. He leaned against the wall and slid one hand into his pocket. No one spoke. Rationality allowed Moran to tell himself, give them a bit of time, at least one cigarette's worth of time. The little peacock needed soothing. He was someone with a heavy addiction to cigarettes, and enjoyed the decaying taste of tar oil dissipating between his teeth. But that day, he couldn't stop himself from feeling resentment. This cigarette seemed especially long. Damn it, he smoked for this long, this vigorous, but it effing still had more than half left. Moran suddenly felt a sort of inexplicable irritation. He blamed this irritation on the unsatisfying smoke. He extinguished the cigarette on the wall, then raised his head. With one hand still in his pocket, he walked towards Chuanning with an air of certainty. Mr. Chu! He stared at Chuanning's face, abruptly tugged at Shuemeng and straightened him up. Then he dragged Shuemeng next to himself. A lazy hint of smile appeared in the corner of his lips. Don't just comfort my little brother. I'm upset too. How's this? You are a good person. Why not see it through to the end? His voice was like a smoker's, low and hoarse. Thus he cleared his throat. And comfort this Guga too. He refers to himself as Guga. Chuanning was momentarily speechless. Absurd. The thought that he had at that time was, this rascal's little Guga, was it him behaving like a jackass, or was it the textbook meaning to remark that his relation to Shuemeng is a male relative that is the same generation but is older than oneself? Okay, that was a little confusing, but pretty much, it looks like based on this little mini theater, if Moran had a cigarette, he would be smoking it because he was jealous of Chuanning comforting and hugging Shuemeng because Shuemeng was distressed that he couldn't get a holy weapon. Of course, Moran kept it to himself, but, you know, his physical actions was that he felt uncomfortable. He felt an uncomfortable feeling in his heart because he felt jealous. And I can picture that modern-day Moran would want Chuanning to call him Guga, even though he's a lot younger than him. So anyway, to recap chapter 47, they made it out of the lake. They were saved by Wang Yue, the dragon, who had given Moran the oh my gosh, wow, who had given him the willow vine. He let them ride on his back and he helped them escape to safety. And then he explained to them that the pretender had killed a lot of the merfolk and the other creatures living in Jincheng Lake in order to test out the Zhenlong chest formation. And that he was probably planning to steal Moran's core in order to power Daishian Liu and learn the 3 forbidden techniques. So, who could this pretender be? Moran noticed that this reincarnation life is a lot different than his first life, and he's noticing that all these changes happened shortly after he reincarnated. Could they be someone from his past? Someone from the first life? Also, Chuanning seems to have an idea of who this pretender could be. Maybe he'll let us know in the next chapter, hopefully. I want to hear what Chuanning's thoughts are. Yeah, anyway, thank you for listening to today's read-along. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!